12 minutes past the hour, and in just a few hours, President Obama will lay out his plan to tackle massive deficits and the national debt. And he's expected to say bluntly that attacking the deficit means raising taxes, renewing his call to try to get rid of the Bush-era tax cuts for the highest income earners. Senator Jeff Sessions is a Republican from Alabama, the ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee. Great to have you with us this morning, Senator.
Good morning.
What are you hoping to hear from the president today when he lays out his proposal for tackling the debt and the deficit?
Well, you know, we're hearing they're talking about a vision, but what we really need, and the Budget Act requires, is the president to submit a plan, one that can be analyzed and compared, let's say, to a real plan submitted by Paul Ryan and the House Republicans that can be evaluated and debated and discussed. So I'm hopeful that we'll see a good bit more specificity than I expect. He submitted one budget already. That budget has received very, very poor reception. It calls for $1.7 trillion in tax increases, but even more in spending increases, making the deficit larger than would be without his plan. So we really need a new plan from the president.
And one thing that we are likely to hear the president call for, and this was, of course, debated before, and in some ways the can was just kicked down the road, and that would be ending the Bush-era tax cuts for families making more than $250,000 a year. Is that a non-starter for you, completely off the table?
I don't think that's the way we need to go. That's not the problem America faces. It's overspending. And there's been a real good study done that shows that the idea of taxing the rich doesn't work. Their incomes are very volatile. In California, Illinois, New York are having serious budget deficits because they depended so heavily on higher income people. Those incomes fall during an economic recession, and they're in huge difficulties now.
You know, you say that the big issue is overspending, Senator. This is Christine. But isn't it overspending? Isn't it too many tax cuts? Isn't it, you know, too long now of just a lack of fiscal discipline on every front? And isn't it that the economy has to be growing more strongly? And some economists say, frankly, if you rein in spending too quickly and too abruptly, that could hurt the economy and hurt your chances of getting things. Isn't it everything?
Well, I would just say it this way. Spending is too high. The president's budget for 2012 calls for, hold your hat, 10% increase in education, 10% increase in energy, 10.5% increase in State Department, 60% in the transportation sector with a phantom tax supposedly to pay for it. This is an irresponsible budget at a time when the inflation is at 2%. We're seeing proposals for those kind of discretionary spending increases. That's why even with his $1.7 trillion tax increases he proposed in his budget, the deficit gets worse.
Well, I want to ask you about the debt ceiling as well, because this is another huge issue where there's not a lot of common ground. How far are Republicans willing to go? We've heard about trying to get some guarantees built into the deal if you are going to approve or give the okay to raising the amount we can borrow. What exactly do you need to see from the president for you to support raising the debt ceiling?
Well, we need real change, something that can be ascertainable. I think we need some systemic changes. We also need some financial commitments that we can rely on that would indicate a reduction in spending and reducing the deficits. I'm not sure what we would all agree on, but I would just say this. The debt limit provides an opportunity for the president, the Congress, and the nation to confront the serious problems we're in and to begin a real solution.
But is this more of a wake-up call? I mean, you wouldn't actually play chicken with the debt ceiling, right? I mean, you would vote eventually to approve it so that we could continue to pay our creditors.
I would just say it this way. I certainly feel that Congress should raise, will have to face up to the fact that we cannot not increase our debt limit. However, if the president thinks he can just waltz in and demand that we do so without providing any willingness to change the unsustainable actions we're carrying out, then he's mistaken. It's not going to be raised if we don't show some changes. It's the opportunity the American people have to say to the children in Washington, you've got to start behaving. We're not going to allow you to spend more money until you demonstrate to us that you're making some real changes in your behavior.
And the rest of the people at home are watching the children in Washington, as you put them in your words, and they're saying, who's whose budget plan are they more favorable to? It's interesting, a CNN opinion research poll found that 48% were more in line with the president, and just a few points below that with the Republican plan. You're both going to have to give something up, you know. I mean, that's the nature of politics. It's not just spending, or it's not just tax increases. It's not just cutting the budget. It's not just reforming the tax reform or Medicare, Social Security, and entitlements. It's going to have to be everything, isn't it?
Well, I would just say, I don't know that that's exactly so. It doesn't mean that we're going to have a 10% increase in the State Department funding next year or education. I mean, how can you propose those kind of ideas when you know you're in a financial crisis? It's beyond comprehension. Every state, city, and county in America is having to reduce spending or has had to reduce spending, some very severely. We haven't taken anything like those steps. And before you talk about raising taxes, when the American people have to know that this government has taken every reasonable step to contain wasteful Washington spending and even not start some programs that we'd like to start because we simply don't have the money. We're spending money we don't have, and we cannot hammer this economy with big tax increases.
All right, Senator Jeff Sessions, thank you so much for joining us.